Gracias. Hi, my name is Hansos Konkolewski, and it's my great pleasure to be your host for this second webinar about Vision Zero in times of COVID-19, organized by the Global Vision Zero Business Council and the International ORP Foundation. There has been an overwhelming interest also in this second event, which counts more than 400 registered participants. I warmly welcome you all and thank you for your interest to join us in addressing one of the most dramatic and unexpected global developments that within weeks has profoundly changed the way we live and work. While we in the occupational safety and health community were busy addressing modern work-life challenges, such as mental health risks and the impact of digitalization, a health threat as ancient as mankind, a rapidly spreading virus infection, has invaded our societies and workplaces. But what is the exact impact of the pandemic on different sectors of the industry and in different parts of the world? What does it mean for people in so-called essential and non-essential industries, for white and blue-collar workers? How does it affect individual behavior? What collective and person-centered measures should be taken? How will the new normal look like in terms of workplace prevention culture and our commitment to Vision Zero? Will the pandemic also provide opportunities for prevention? And in case it does so, how can we sustain them? With this second webinar, the Global Vision Zero Business Council and the International ORP Foundation would like to offer a platform to address some of these questions by sharing practical prevention measures and experiences with the management of the pandemic from a workplace perspective. Let me briefly introduce the two host organizations. I have no picture here. Sorry, I have no picture.
All of them are on site.
Okay, but I will do it without a picture then. Well, firstly, it's the Global Vision Zero Business Council, which was formed in October 2018 on invitation by the Secretary General of the International Social Security Association, or ISA, and that was about 1 year after the launch of the Global Vision Zero campaign during the World Congress for Safety and Health at Work in Singapore. The objectives of the Vision Zero Business Council is to promote the Vision Zero thinking, the mindset in the business community. And we believe that time has come for business actually to take a lead in developing a global prevention culture. In order to do that, we offer different platforms to meet and exchange. We contribute to international and national events, and we collaborate with the Vision Zero campaign and with other Vision Zero councils. I will later on show you the URL where you can find all information about the Vision Zero Business Council. It's at www.vzbusinessforum.com. And there you also will find the presentations that will be shown today. The second organizer is the International ORP Foundation, and ORP stands for Occupational Risk Prevention. And this organization, this foundation, has from the outset offered logistical support to our work in the council. And the foundation is a non-profit organization whose mission is to provide innovative concepts and practical solutions to support companies in developing a healthy and sustainable business culture. And to this end, the foundation works closely together with CERPI, which is a research center for corporate excellence innovation at the Technical University of Catalonia, also known as the EUPC. And of course, the foundation is one of the many registered partners of the ISA's Vision Zero campaign. Well, today we have, like for 2 weeks ago, we have a busy program with interesting speakers from a variety of different industries. So please welcome together with me our speakers, which is Philippe Delbecq from L'Oréal, Jesper Kragh-Nielsen from Novo Nordisk, Irina Karpova, who is here on behalf of Elena Kompashenko, representing a Russian company, Zarubezhnev. And finally, it's Franco Duto, representing a Japanese company, Tsubaki Nakashima. They will share with us their experiences over the next hour. And at the end, we have reserved 30 minutes for a question and answer session, which will be moderated by Estrella Nieto, who is my co-moderator today. And we look forward to receiving many questions. As you know, the Zoom platform facilitates an easy way of communicating any questions or comments you might have. On the bottom of the Zoom page, you can have the Q&A symbol, and there you can provide your questions. So we look forward to having a virtual discussion with you, and that you give us your input to what no doubt will be a very, very exciting webinar today on these topics. But without further ado, I'm pleased to introduce our first speaker and topic. So it's Monsieur Philippe Delbecq. He will speak to us about his company and how it has responded to the pandemic, both as regards its employees and the wider public, in line with the company's social responsibility policy. Philippe is the corporate industrial hygiene toxicologist at L'Oréal, and he is based in France. Philippe, please share with us how you have managed to both protect staff and to support the fight against the pandemic at the front line. Please, Philippe.
Thanks very much, Jean-François. And hello, everybody. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to give you a few words about what we've been doing at L'Oréal over the past few weeks. So let me share my screen with you. Okay. Let me share. There is also some, yes, here we go. Can you all see my screen? Okay, let's go. So first of all, let me give you a little introduction about our context. How did we live this coronavirus period of time? I'm also going to describe about, within a few words, the internal protection measures that we've been taking on the different sites over the globe. And I will also spend some time on what we've been doing for the outside world. We have not been only working for plants, but also for the community. When looking at from a helicopter view at the L'Oréal company, it's a big boat with about 88,000 employees. And we can see that there are so many countries and different plants involved that looks sometimes like a kind of Babel tower. And when you have to deal with a Babel tower like that, you need to have some strong directions, strong guidance in order to make everybody move in the same direction. So if we look at the coronavirus context, in fact, we can see that we have to deal not only with the virus, but we also have to deal with a lot of different languages, a lot of different laws, regulations, a lot of different policies, and we may probably have as many perceptions of the coronavirus as people facing the coronavirus itself. We also had to deal over the globe with different dates of pandemic onset, which did not make the thing easier. And of course, not all the countries had the same conditions of lockdown. So that makes an extra complication in order to make sure that all the plants, all the L'Oréal people are moving at the same time in the same direction. Just to give you an illustration of that, this is just an extract of an Excel file that we've been doing in order to see from helicopter view the different countries on the left, how they are applying the current policies with respect to masks, with respect to tests, and with respect to checking access control. I mean, all kind of measures that we could think of before we starting the plants. And we can see that not all the countries are having exactly the same behavior. They all have their internal rules, and that did not make our task easier, of course. How did we proceed with respect to the internal protection measures? We started with a very limited amount of activities that we wanted to maintain, and I'm going to elaborate further about this one on the next slides. But once everybody was confined, then the plants were running smoothly, and we had a lot to deal with respect to the restart of the activities. I mean, we had to define a lot of different instructions suitable for the workplace, for the work organization, as well as all that is related to sales and traveling. And of course, we also had to deal quite a lot with respect to health, with some instructions that we're going to see further. Those instructions have been, for 3 of them, have been elaborated by a crisis committee, of course. They are worldwide applicable. And the good thing about being in a centralized organization is that it's more or less like an army. The head is speaking and the rest of the organization is moving in the same direction. Of course, those instructions had to be very simple to read in order for them to be simple to apply. So they are single page format and very crisp, no time to lose. So how did we conduct the business on plants? Of course, no need to say that safety is a core value and still the case even in the coronavirus period. Of course, we have implemented, like many other companies, we had seen that at the last seminar, access control and the local organization. We have also implemented good hygiene practices with providing a lot of gel, masks, and so on to both employees and our contractors, because we also welcome a lot of contractors every day on our plants. Of course, we have been putting some new procedures for cleaning and disinfection, and this was in line with all the instructions we had already elaborated in order for them to be displayed and applied on all the different facilities. And the business continuity planning is something that I'm going to elaborate within 2 slides now, very few moments. So that was for one part of the population at L'Oréal. The second part of the population was confined, and a lot of people were working from home. And it was a real experience for a lot of them, because that's a situation that no one had lived for more than a century. So we had to redefine the way we were going to work. So bearing in mind that safety was still was still a core value and responsibility, a lot of people had been confined already in March, and that needed, of course, a lot of IT support so that everybody could work at the same pace, exactly like before. So that was kind of experience. Now, the part of L'Oréal takes part. In fact, the reason why we had been maintaining some activity on the plants is that in a lot of sites had been mobilized on the production of hand sanitizer gel. I mean, over the more than 40 plants we have within the group, 28 had been turned in order to and been modified in order to be capable of providing hand sanitizer gels. In fact, the 13 remaining plants were not capable of handling flammables. That's the reason why we couldn't mobilize them. Otherwise, they would have been mobilized. And this was the opportunity for us to help those that are on the front line and that are fighting every day the virus. I mean, the hospitals, retirement homes, and all those that are confronting daily with the virus. But L'Oréal has also worked a lot on providing masks, providing goggles, and providing a lot of different pieces of equipment, PPEs, to a lot of different communities, as well as provided some help to not only the French government, but also local authorities in order to distribute all those masks and all those PPEs and all those gels. So within a few pictures, I would like to give you the opportunity of seeing more in detail what we have been doing at L'Oréal. last but not least, as a take-home, we can say that L'Oréal has deployed a real strategy, but that was not only for employees and plants, but also in order to better support all the vulnerable and local population, not only inside L'Oréal with respect to the employees, but also workers outside L'Oréal, those that are confronting with the virus. Thank you for your attention.
A quite impressive insight into not only how your company has focused on protecting its employees, but also to engage in the fight against the pandemic on the front line, where people need it the most. And I think this is in a way a very nice example on how companies, the role of companies in our modern society, and in which way they can actually quickly adapt to assisting where society needs them the most, besides, of course, further conducting their business. So I'm sure there will be many questions related to exactly that balance in your company. But thank you so much. Our next speaker is Jesper Krag-Nielsen, and Jesper is the Senior Project Manager for Health and Safety at Novo Nordisk, and he's based in Denmark. As you might know, I have a Danish background as well, and Novo Nordisk is really one of the jewels in the crown of Danish enterprises. So we're very happy to have you with us. And please share with us your experience in managing the pandemic. And in particular, also what I find interesting is your views on the disruptive nature of the pandemic on people, on the organization, on business, but also on prevention. And not only right now, where we're still in the middle of it, but also for the future now, the so-called new normal. So Jesper, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. And thank you also to L'Oréal for a very inspiring presentation. Yes, we have a small presentation as well. Yes, so let's just give you some idea what Novo Nordisk is, and we are a pharmaceutical industry, and thus are also providing a very significant service to our patients, and something that we need to have in our focus every day, since a lot of patients are actually relying on our products. We are a lot of people. We are 42,000 employees, both in sales, production, and administrative functions all over the globe. And we have I think we have 170 countries where our products are being sold. We have a lot of affiliates, and our production side are well spread on most continents. And actually, we should add a little spot in Africa, and we're just opening up in Kaluga in Russia, and we are also setting up in Iran. So we are actually spread also like L'Oréal across the globe, with a global view on how to handle this situation. We're also a company that really tries to see the global health challenge in many ways. And of course, our prime objective is, of course, diabetics and other patients with chronic diseases. And now it actually shows that some of these patient groups are actually more in risk in this COVID-19 than most other patient groups, which also provides us further motivation in ensuring that our patients are well medicated and in control with their chronic disease. We're also a company who would like to be sustainable, like a lot of other companies like us. And this also actually have an impact on how we actually react to this crisis. So if I dive a little bit down in my own little department, or our department, it's a classical health and safety department with approximately 30 employees, and we give out internal advice. So we're like an internal consultancy company But we're also a company who does a lot of other things. We try to drive the health and safety and environment agenda. And we also are trying to help out with practical guidance on how to do different projects, or a lot of other questions that comes to us. So this is our normal daily life, and it's very much centered around excellence and competencies and being highly specialized. So what happens when you suddenly are being put into a crisis? Well, first of all, I think it's very important to think, and I think you touched a little bit upon it, Hans, on the speed at which we need to decide and make decisions. I think that's one of the most profound implications on the companies like us, is that we need to make decisions that are very fast. We also need to make decisions that are not necessarily founded in good evidence or even data, because this runs so fast that we need to make decisions before we actually know it all, which also means that we can make mistakes, and we should be open about this. So we divided our response in our department into 3 phases. And the first one is, of course, ensuring this business continuity so that we are able to provide these vital medicines to our patients. But it was also our job to set up, together with another part of the organization, to set up a crisis response team, not only on a corporate level, but actually also on local levels. We set up medical advice and surveillance. I actually started making epidemic curves for the most vital countries for our company, to make sure that we know where the epidemic, or pandemic as it turned out to be, were heading. And that actually started even before it spread from China to the rest of the world. And again, we started, how can we continue this line of production? How can we continue when we are looking at social distancing and segregation? How can we organize our team so that the night shift doesn't meet the morning shift, something that we're not used to? We're used to meeting each other in a period of time in order to deliver how production went in the shift before, and so everybody knows how that progresses. And now suddenly we're not meeting anymore, but trying to convey the last 24 hours to the next team when they come in. Of course, cleaning and the use of personal protection equipment were very significant in this first phase. And now we are in the middle of phase 2, and slowly in some countries reaching phase 3, where we're trying to get back to this new normal. In phase 2, of course, this at stay at home is not just something that you do. There are still a lot of things we need to consider. Ergonomics and physical well-being from home. How do we lead people? How do managers and leaders help their employees prioritizing and helping with other issues when we are now at a distance? So this whole mental well-being actually became the biggest topic in phase 2. And we set up, some of my very good colleagues set up meetings with global affiliates on how to handle this. And now we are reaching back to the new normal, trying to get back to the new normal, still having social distancing, still have segregation, but are also sharing to some degree the workspace. And how do we do that in a sensible way? So if I look, how does the world look when all this is over? I think there are a couple of things here that is interesting. I don't think we really have seen a big decrease in our efficiency when working at home. So does this actually now constitute a new normal? And what about other potential changes in our operational model? More digitization. I think before all this started, I was new to Zoom and Teams, and I thought it was impossible to do a project where workshop digitalized with people far apart, but now that's suddenly the new normal. So again, it also has created a bigger push for automation. And of course, the social distancing might be something that we need to have for a long period after this. So this may be some signs on how the new normal can be, even if this coronavirus is over. Yeah, and then just if you want to, of course, learn more about Novo Nordisk, if you never heard of us, then there are a couple of ways to see how we are coping and how Novo Nordisk is in general. Thank you very much for your attention.
I think we recognize the faces also from other companies. And what I found in particular interesting is the focus on the well-being side, because classically we have been focusing on the accident risks and the occupational disease risks. And a situation of change, a dramatic change like this, of course, influences a lot on well-being. When you're not together in the normal work organization, when you have to work remote, when you have to combine home work, being at home as yourself, and maintaining links with a colleague, with the hierarchy. I think this is quite interesting, and look forward to discuss later on today with you exactly what the impact of that will be for prevention work in the future. Will there be new priorities, so to say?
Yes.
Well, with this, I'm pleased to introduce our third speaker. And welcome Irina. Irina Karpova. She is a senior consultant and OSH practice training manager as a consultancy in the Russian Federation called Everyco Group. And she replaces today Elena Kompasenko. Elena is, as you have seen from the announcement, is the OSH manager of a large Russian energy company of Zarubezhnev and member of the Global Vision Zero Business Council. But due to exactly the pandemic, she has to attend urgent issues today in the field, so to say. And Irina has been so kind to present Elena's, let's say, presentation for us on her behalf. So thank you very much for that, for being available for this, Irina, because I think we look very much forward to hear how a big Russian energy company actually is dealing with the crisis, also because there seems to have to be a bit of a delay in terms of the crisis development in the Russian Federation compared to where I'm located, for example, in Spain. So we are very interested in hearing your experiences.
Sure. Thank you, Hans Horst. And I'm going to share the presentation right now. Okay. So this is the presentation I'm going to talk about today, and I'm actually was asked to present the measures that, as Hans Horst mentioned, the big Russian oil and gas company has implemented at their workplaces. It's actually the company which is not only operating in Russia, but also internationally in different countries, such as Vietnam, Serbia, Bosnia, Cuba, and so on. So there are quite a lot of different locations, and also in Russia, it's coming from the south of Russia to the north above the polar circle. So there is a big sometimes there is a big issues about the logistics and stuff. So today I'm going to tell you what are the steps that company has taken to minimize COVID-19 spread and to cope with this situation. So before the all the official announcement, companies started to look at this situation with the COVID-19 and already prepared at the beginning of March, when it was not that bad in Russia. They already prepared the plan and what measures they are going to take in order to minimize the impact on the company everywhere in where they operate. So the first of all was they organized, the company organized the center, operational information collection system, and the center of collecting all the data on a continuous basis. And so they can react quickly and deal with this situation. Also, as other companies, I guess the Zarubezhneft have taken the measure to reorganize the workplaces for employees and send as many people as possible to work from home. And also was a big issue for the business continuity and how to reduce an impact on the for the people who is critical for the operations, who has to stay in the office and who has to stay at the locations in the all the affiliate companies in the world. So they prepared 4-level action readiness and response system, or the plan, and actually it was spread into 4 levels, and the first is the regular mode. But when all this started, it was a regular mode. There was not many people infected. Russia was more or less stable at that point. Then the second stage was ready to response, when all the measures are in place but not implemented yet, not started yet. Then action mode plan A, I think it's where we are right now, is a sharp growth of registered coronavirus cases in the country. And emergency mode plan B, when there are cases of the coronavirus among employees and contractors on site. When I talk about this company, it's in Russia, it's about 11,000 employees, but also more than double of the number of the contractors on site. So the first of all, operational information collection system, it's located in Moscow, and it's actually collects all the data. There is a certain time when all the affiliate companies have to report the latest updates on the coronavirus, and this information center is preparing a combined report, and it goes to the situational headquarters, and the chief of the situational headquarters is actually the general director. And so the information they're sending on the daily basis is like general situation in the country, situation at the location, number of employees on a sick leave, if this sick leave is related to the flu or symptoms or something. So all this data is like constantly collected. Then second step was, it was well before the federal restrictions took place or anything else like that was represented by the government, but the company already sent almost a half of the employees to work from home. Before it was a big spread of the coronavirus in the country. I'm talking about Russia right now, but it was the same in the other countries as well. So it was almost half of employee was sent home, and they, with 100% of the salary kept for them, there's no any reduction or anything like that. And they particularly thought about the people who is in a risky, who has some risky conditions or age or maybe health conditions, and they were sent straight away. They were the first who was actually sent to stay home. So what are the measures were taken straight away? Like in the office, again, every morning, all the people who has to go to work, they are actually having body temperature check. They have periodical test for the coronavirus. There is no any visitors. I mean, this is absolutely critical. Who has to go to work, who cannot stay at home. Then they have closed the offices for visitors. They cancel all meetings. They cancel all the conferences, trainings, and so on. All the meetings are virtual now. And if there is a necessity to go to the meeting, they will keep the social distance, and everyone who is going there, they're wearing masks. So the closed, they actually canteen was reorganized. It's all now scheduled for not many people to be there at the same time. No any clues, so one by one entering it, and using lunch packs instead of the normal, plates, forks, knives, and so on. They're just using the recycled ones. And the most important thing is to keep the locations safe where the production going on. And this was quite difficult, especially if we're talking about the remote locations in Russia. They are working shifts. So they actually closed those locations, and instead of 30 days on a shift, people are there now for 60 days. And no extra people coming on going. They have built or brought some mobile isolators in case anybody sick. They be put directly to this compartment and keep there, and make sure that nobody else is got this virus. But so far so good. And organizational measures was that okay, so they have like a health monitoring every morning. They are putting color coding for some employees because they're all wearing masks now, and it's difficult to recognize people. So they introduce some color coding to understand which person is working where. Also, they performed a few emergency trainings and drills so that everyone aware what to do in case of the contamination. Because these places are actually very difficult to access, they kept food stock for 60 days there on site so that everybody can get some. And also there are some additional sanitary processing for all surfaces organized. And it's also, all these measures are including all the contractors on site, not only for their own employees, but all the contractors who happen to be there at that stage and who has to stay there for 60 days right now. And to tell you about the current status, if you look in Russia, it's I think many people monitor different countries, but it's rapidly going up. We are not on a plateau yet. So this as of 1st of May, when this presentation was prepared, there was in total more than 114 cases in Russia, and likely no cases of COVID-19 among employees of Zarubezhneft or contractors who is actually right now on site on the facilities. So all these measures they're taking are actually helping very well to control and to be ready to respond. But they are ready to respond if there is any cases right now. So this is it from me. Thank you. And later on, if there are any questions, I can answer. Thank you. Cannot hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So thank you very much, Irina, for your presentation and for this insight into a company that has very different locations, also very, very remote locations, north of the polar cycle, with a circle with temperatures you can't even imagine here in Spain, and how you manage this process also regarding your contractors. And this is one of the very interesting things, I think, in the way that Zarubezhnev does its activities, that it always includes all contractors in its safety and health policies. And I'm not surprised that you do that as well with the COVID, for obvious reasons, for the infection risk, but also I think this is not just for this occasion, it's one of the marks, so to say, of this company. So thank you very much for that. And well, we cross our fingers. We wish and hope that Zarubezhnev also in the future maintains these zero COVID infections. Now Russia is just now taking up, so we are all looking with concern to developments in your country, and we wish you all the best. You had some time to adjust, so to say, or to prepare for the situation. More time than other countries had. So, and it seems, in my view, that Zarubezhnev had taken this very systematically into consideration. So, thank you once again, and we come back to the questions later on. So, and last but not least, the next speaker is Mr. Franco Dutto, who is Vice President for HR, Compliance and Sustainability at Tsubaki Nakashima, which is, as you can hear, it's a Japanese company. But Franco is actually based in beautiful Italy. Italy that has shared quite a lot of the strains that Spain also has over the past weeks. So we also want to express our solidarity with the Italian population, because it's one of the populations that has suffered the most from this pandemic. So, but this is not what this is all about. This is more about talking about I think a very interesting angle to our discussion, and I think therefore I also placed your presentation at the very end, Franco. It's because you give our discussion a kind of new perspective, no? And this is what you also were eager to share with us, because you have reflected on this development not just from a narrow, let's say, safety and health point of view, but also from a people, from an organization, from a management point of view. And we heard throughout the presentations today and also 2 weeks ago that this new relationship now, when you work remote, when the hierarchy is kind of broken, when the community, the working together environment is broken, and what does this all mean? And especially I look forward to your assessment of, well, which changes will it bring to the way that we actually organize our work life and our lives. So please, Franco, you have the floor.
So you have a lot of expectations from me. So I hope that I will be able to share at least my experience. I mean, in this company, my growing experience, because this is new. Can you see my screen? Can you see my screen?
Yes, it's perfect.
Okay, fantastic, fantastic. So I hope so. Okay, so first of all, thank you very much for the invitation. The topic that I will cover in the next 15 minutes, and please stop me if I am talking too much, is the new perspective on the opportunity, on risk and opportunities and managing people. So it may seem a little bit braggy, but in reality, it's simply to share an experience, a new experience, and not yet well-defined experience, of course, observing the organization in one hand, and also the individual behaviors of a company, as my company, that is not particularly large, not like my colleagues, but widespread in the most part of the world. So we have, as you will see very soon. Okay, I'm working in the field of HR and sustainability, compliance too, since many years, unfortunately. Fortunately, because of I like my job. Unfortunately, because of the age, obviously. I think that HR and sustainability, especially HR, is a sort of oil and filter of the organization. Invisible, something, a substance invisible, but important elements to obtain the maximum effectiveness and efficiency from the engine of the entire organization. So few days ago, I read an interesting article on the New York Times, but okay, despite the article, the title is fantastic in my opinion. It is like COVID-19 has determined and the end of an era. So ante-corona and post-corona, before corona, after corona. So the end of a way of working, the end of a way to doing business, the end of the way we are living our lives. And this is maybe the end of a time in which we all ran frantically to reach who knows what kind of goals and objective, who knows what kind of freedoms, globalization, moving the borders of the world further east, flexibility working flexibility without any control. I don't know. So, I mean, we assisted in the last 20, 30 years to move the plants on the eastern side of the world. And now maybe it's time to rethink to the global strategy. But also that the different lockdowns were only the prelude of a general slowdown of our actions globally. In any case, and despite the tragic story that we are living, this is a fantastic and exceptional, excellent historical opportunity to observe the dynamics of our companies, our behaviors, processes, methods, approaches, relationships between the people and the municipality, between the people and the government, between the people, the company and the neighbors, between the company and the unions also, and our capacity to face the crisis, our solidarity and also selfishness, and take advantages of the great opportunity that we have to redefine our organizational models and maybe our business models. In this sense, it's up to us to decide if it will be a new era or not, or simply the continuation of an old story. The context. So Tsubaki Nakashima is a relatively small company with 3,500 people located in 21 more or less 21 countries, 21 plants, etc. We have 30 different nationalities, so the cultural differences, the language are an opportunity, but also an issue. We produce cages for the bearing industry, but also and especially steel balls and rollers, but also ceramic, plastic, glass, aluminum, and other precision products for different sectors and for many, many different applications. And we are the leader in our sector worldwide. I mean, the balls, high quality balls. Somebody else already showed a similar picture. So this is the picture of the actual situation. The actual situation is tragic because we have more or less 50% of the world, of our world, stopped or shut down or relenting a lot. So, and we are seriously affected by the pandemic, but fortunately not in terms of the health of our employees, because nobody the moment so far was affected. But a larger part of our customers are closed. You know, the automotive sector lost 97% of the market in few weeks, etc. As you can see in this slide, 50% of the world is still running, but don't forget that, for example, China and also Thailand, partially Japan, was stopped 2 months ago or 3 months ago. And the tragic thing is that many, many workers are now in temporary layoff or in furlough, if you prefer, more or less protected by the local labor law or by a government-specific regulation. And this is a point to which we will come back, because maybe it will be an important element in the future to decide the strategies of the company. What I don't like is when we define the COVID-19 a surprise, because this is not a surprise. I read an article recently, and here you can find the abstract where, you know, this state of alarm has taken us by surprise. We are profoundly affecting on our daily work and private life. It is true. It is true. But at the beginning of the year, we had a very, very strong message coming from China. So it was clearly a problem, clearly something that potentially could have a tragic impact on the rest of the world. But when it was understood that this new type of coronavirus had been identified in China, and consequently all the countries could potentially be affected, maybe several times the reaction of a lot of people, I mean, I'm talking about our people, our management, thought that this is not our problem, this is a Chinese problem, only affecting the Chinese people, you know. And instead of having solidarity, compassion, etc., we closed the borders, you know. For at least 6 weeks, nobody, while observing how the COVID-19 was spreading in Asia, prepared plans, took precautions or actions if we exclude the traveling from and to infected areas. And even if our company has a very well-organized risk management committee, the risk assessment was not updated, no business continuity plan. On the contrary, as you mentioned, Hans, Italy was one of the first nations out of China strongly affected. The ranks of the outcasts expanded in the collective organization, as did the stupid arrogance on the more evolved nation. And always I speak of our organization, of course. More than once I have heard statements such, here the virus will not have any impact because our government and our health system is very well prepared. Or we don't want any Italian or Chinese or Japanese or Asian people to come visit us. We want to avoid the infection. Could you imagine now how the problem is spread out in the world? In fact, I believe that COVID-19, I'm provocating, of course, is one of the most democratic things that we never saw before. It doesn't consider different in sex, race, gender, religion, barriers, borders, etc., etc. So what did we do? We created, obviously, a task force, as we already saw before, with a lot of participation, with the participation of the head of the companies, you know, a multicultural, task force, and the success and it is working very well. I mean, at least to speed up the process of decision, at least to decrease the number of mistakes and make the correct things, make the correct or less incorrect decisions to take very quickly, because the rapidity is one of the success factors, as well as define the purpose of the task force, clear rules, so the rules of the game, the use of the teleconferences, the limited time and effective communication, so the gift of the synthesis, you know, reduced to the essential, the frequency of the meeting, the updating information in real time, so to have a clear picture of what it was going on. And spending every day at least 30 minutes, not at least, just 30 minutes per plant every 2 days, more or less it is possible. It was possible to have a clear picture on the new regulation, the evolution of the virus, the market, the production plan, identify the measure to protect the people, the health of the people, and the salaries of the people. Share the best practices and univocally direct the communication internally and externally. Which are the lessons learned? So I mean, I put here a picture that is almost quite famous. That is the Ryoanji Japanese garden in Kyoto. But the meaning is very important, because as you can see, this is a pebble raked, combed garden with different waves every day, ranked with different waves every day, with 15 stones, different position, different dimension, etc., etc., and surrounded on 3 sides by a wall, as you can see, and on the 4th by a porch. The sense of one of the interpretation of this Japanese garden, the Zen philosophy, is that this is representing the reality. When you walk in, you can only see few stones. But when you move on the porch, when you walk down the porch, others suddenly appear until you see 14 of them, but not all of them. And in order to see the reality, the message is that we have to move. We have to observe, first of all, change the angle of vision, aware of the fact that we will never understand everything, and that in any case, like the waves are wrecked, pebbles are wrecked every day, there will always be unknown points of view. So the first great lesson of this COVID-19 is the humility in knowing, observing, learning, looking from different visual angles. The second lesson learned for us, I mean, but reading a lot of newspaper, it should be the same almost everywhere. This crisis has brought also out the inefficiency of our companies, but also the efficiencies hidden behind the cliché, the organizational bureaucracy. There's absolutely and the spasmodic search of profit at all costs, the smart factory, the artificial intelligence, the robots, and so on. So now it's much more clear the skills, the positive skills that we have, the positive competencies, but also the incompetencies, dramatically but forcefully highlighting the differences between the true leaders and many other followers, regardless on the organization position and salary, exposing the importance of a disciplined and methodical approach, but also the creativity that is one of the crucial parts, in my opinion, to find new solutions to all problems. We are discovering also there is no a single organizational paradigm, and the rigidity of the relationship with the unions or the work council are changing, because, you know, imagining new shifts, someone else mentioned the new shifts, you know, organizing the working day in a different way, it's possible, and maybe with better results. And the ability to predict also, it's another lesson learned, to observe the reality using the data, so the information, but also the brain, obviously. And last but not least, the solidarity, the difference between the solidarity and the selfishness, the humility and the arrogance of the organization. Let me spend a couple of minutes, talking about the possible scenarios of the story. One is the smart working. The smart working is very common in our organization, like our organization, but now we are learning that traveling sometimes is not necessary, even if it's very important to have direct connection with the people, but we can meet the people, we can have a good knowledge of the people, we can understand better one each other if we have frequent communication, despite the tool that we are using. The second element is the fact that we have to rethink to our strategy. So to the strategy to manage a company like our company in the world, because maybe the supply chain will change. Maybe we will move from a global company to a regional organization. we will think to have plants everywhere. We will think to serve our customer from the region. We will think to have more efficient communication, much more ideas of the resources that we have. Maybe the fact that we are working in remote way, in the remote mode, will increase the number of people that we will have available around the world to do something else. I mean, to do jobs that are not confined in one region, etc. I want to say that thinking, this is a very simple ideogram in Japanese that is ichigo ichie, but I want to mention another ideogram in Japanese. That is the ideogram of the word crisis, because it's formed by two characters. One means life, one means death. So the message of the ideogram in Japanese means that it's up to us to decide if in a crisis we want to survive or we want to die. And it's the destiny is in our hands to decide what is the best thing to do to really become stronger and stronger after a crisis like that. Thank you very much.
Thank you indeed, Franco, for this, I think, very inspiring presentation with enlarging a bit our view on the crisis, taking a bit of a distance, because sometimes we are too deep into it, and I think the media are part of that. We are bombarded with this kind of very technical information, with figures every day, and suddenly the most popular profession seems to become a statistician. Because they are now the heroes of our time, because they try to predict how this will develop in the future. And I think, like you, what we need instead is to take a much more philosophical approach to it now, and recall the great thinkers, and no doubt the Japanese kind of word for crisis. I would rather say risks and opportunities. Life and death is a bit too dramatic, but let's say that it holds a lot of risks, of course. But in my view, from a prevention point of view, the risks, the immediate risk, infection risks, are pretty straightforward to handle. No? This is something that we have done in occupational safety and health from the very beginning. The hygienic risks were some of the first we addressed, and I think, therefore, the much more interesting is to look at it from an organization point of view, and as you do, and ask ourselves, what does this mean for the way we organize ourselves, the hierarchies we have, the capacities we have? Because one thing that I think has impressed us all is how individuals suddenly strive and show capacities that often are hidden in an organization. And thank you for pointing that out. That of course we should look in the mirror, but learn from what we see, and not always be too impressed by it. But with this, I really would like to thank you, Franco, and we come with more time, because you have been very, very sharp. Maybe you've been too strict. I've been too strict in my introduction to our event, because you really have all observed the time limits, which I appreciate, and I'm sure also our audience appreciates, because this leaves us more time for what I think is very important now, that we use the presence of such outstanding experts to address some of the questions, of course, that come up, and the doubts, and more details as regards the interesting presentations that you have shared with us. So now it's time for me to pass on the moderator function to my dear colleague, Estrella Nieto, who, as I mentioned, is a professor at CERPI, at this our kind of partner of the ORP Foundation, and besides being a professor there, she is also, very importantly, the community manager at prevencionintegral.com, which is one of the largest, let's say, online communities of experts in the prevention of occupational risks. So we're very pleased that you are now taking over the moderation. And please, Estrella, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Hans. First of all, congratulations to all of the speakers. It had been very interesting presentations, and I have many questions. I'll try to summarize in some of them. The first question is to Philip Delbecq. As you say, your company, it's in many countries and different cultures. Do you think that the health and safety measures that you had been applying these days, like social distances, work from home, etc., they are going to stay in place permanently?
I don't know if my mic is open. Okay. Yeah, in fact, this is under discussion. For the time being, we know that we're going to restart as per May 11, and that's at least what had been decided for France. And I think that in the rest of the other countries, we follow the word of the government, local government. I know that in China, for instance, they have restarted already their activities. So step by step, depending on what the local authorities are saying, we're sticking to their words, and then we were restarting the activities. In terms of social distancing, we have also described in our instructions the things that we think that are needed to restart the business. I remember that at the last seminar, Gianluca Capodimonte had been describing some features that they have been implementing on their plans to restart. We have exactly the same kind of process. I didn't bring with me today all the pictures and all the short movies that we have about that, but we have exactly the same kind of structure with people going, and they're not going to cross each other in the corridors. They're going to keep distance. We're going to establish some period of time where people will be located at their home, and they will be getting back to work the week after. I mean, there's a whole organization that is taking place. For the time being, we're just busy with defining those rules, and we're going to distribute them by the beginning of May. I mean, this week, it shall be displayed within the organization. For the time being, all that had been happening before had been sticking to the rules coming from the local authorities.
Yeah, it will be maybe easier in one place than another. So I have another question for Jesper. I don't know if he's
Yes, I'm here.
Hi, Jesper.
Hello.
Well, you mentioned that you had to change your prevention activities rapidly to secure critical production and activities, and that this brought about risk of errors. What have you learned from these errors, and what does the new normal mean for prevention at Novo Nordisk? What will be your new organization?
I think for a large extent, the organization will probably stay the same. But I think the way we organize work and the way we see a healthy and good work life will maybe change to some degree. For instance, that if we are equally efficient at home as we are at the office, then to some degree, why go to the office at all? No matter if we have Corona or if we have a normal situation. So I think that what we may be looking at, and a big stress on them maybe, is that maybe this actually calls for more flexibility from an employer point of view, so that we actually liberate our employees to a larger extent to choose whether they should go to the office or if they should stay at home. If we look at on how we are giving out advice, I think we are all different, and we all have different preferences in what kind of working environment we actually like. Myself, I actually thrive in these situations where we need to make rapid decisions and stuff like that. But we also need to acknowledge that a lot of people really don't like it. That this creates uncertainty, and so it also has to deal with this kind of uncertainty. How does my life look tomorrow? Do I still have a job? if we call for more automation in order to prevent us being too depending on human resources, then what will happen to me? Will I still have a job? And all those questions are something that people will start to ask, especially in this kind of situation. And so we need to handle this as well.
Yeah, thank you, Jesper. Irina?
Yes?
Someone want to know, what are the main measures taken by the company right now?
Well, because we are in the escalation phase, which is phase 3 and level 3 that was company preparing for right now. It is only absolutely essential personnel right now is at work. If we're talking about the office, because we now have a quarantine all over the country, it is special permits for people to go to work, and the company provides transportation to and from. Only one person in the room. All the food is brought directly to the people, and all extra cleaning, extra disinfection, and all the personnel provided with the PPE, which is masks, gloves, and so on. If we're talking, which is most importantly, about the production locations, well, it was a tremendous job done because they brought some extra living quarters, and now people do not need to stay for a few people in the room. And also when they go to and from shifts, they work 12-hour shifts. There is no social contact. They don't contact to each other. They transfer, overlap their jobs remotely, from the distance. So there is no direct contact. And also they brought more tests on site, so the people can test more often. And if there is any symptoms, as I said, there is a special isolation units which are provided by the company for all people there. And of course, disinfection. All the transports, all the transport vehicles, facilities. So again, food. There's no canteens anymore. All food is brought to your workplace. That's the measures right now.
Perfect. Thank you, Irina. And Franco, hi Franco. I love the idea of Japanese garden. I think it's very important to have this idea at 316 point of view. No? And there is a question for you. They say, how do you security the quality and the quantity and quality of adequate PPEs? And have you noticed a change in behavior and accident levels?
No, I mean, this is the positive thing in the sense that everywhere, because obviously we are having different speeds. So we have plants open, plants closed, different rules, different regulations coming from the different governments, etc., etc. But despite the fact that a lot of people were working remotely, a lot of people were requested to work in different shifts, to change their working life, or to stay at home, in furlough or in temporary layoff. The sense of responsibility of the people was very high, really very high, for some extent unexpected. So we really, if I have to say in one word, I believe that the people, as the organization, as a number of people who are representing the entire organization, is growing a lot in sense of responsibility, in sense of quality of the job done. 2 days ago, I participated in a meeting with other Italian HR managers, etc., talking about how to evaluate the people which kind of KPIs we have to use to evaluate the people remotely? By the results. I mean, the results are enough. I mean, the participation, you know, the paradox is the fact, the paradox in brackets, obviously, is the fact that the people are working much more than before because they believe in the company. So this is a very, very positive news coming from the field. I mean, we never had a problem with the unions. The unions were absolutely collaborative everywhere. In Poland, they decided to cut 20% of the working hours and 20% of the salary because, sorry, to open a parenthesis, but it's important to say that unfortunately Europe is using different speeds also in the subsidies from the people. We have countries like Italy, like the Netherlands, for example, where there are a lot of protections coming from the government, I mean in terms of subsidies, and we have entire nations like Bosnia, Slovakia, Poland, where the people are alone, so, and only the company is taking care of them. So this is something that really we have to evaluate in a very negative for the government, but positive for the people that we have.
So maybe related, and this question could be for all of you, all of the speakers. Someone asked, is the pandemic hiding other occupational hazards in organizations? I mean, maybe like some psychological, or maybe it could be like asbestos or other problems that could be.
Philippe, you are the first one.
Yes, Philip, if you want to.
Could you say it again, please?
If it is the pandemic hiding other occupational hazards in organizations, it could be like psychological or other problems.
Maybe I could offer to start then.
Okay.
Thank you, Jasper.
I think that most companies, including ours, have actually a very solid knowledge on what kind of hazards that we have, and those certainly don't change during these situations. It might be that some of the priorities will change, and some of the priorities will change because we are not at the office, and then of course some of these hazards will actually disappear because we are no longer there. For instance, we're doing virtual sales force, so the road safety are suddenly not a problem anymore. So I don't think that they would hide, but they will probably change, and they will probably change in priority. For the mental well-being, we actually made a pulse survey for the whole organization in order to get a quick and dirty kind of feeling where people are. And it actually turned out that this managing by distance and this whole mental well-being were a hot topic. And thus we were, since it came up in this pulse survey, we were actually able to react to it very fast. And now making almost daily video conferences with managers in order to give them advice on how to handle this situation.
Thank you, Jesper. Maybe Irina or Franco, Philip, do you have an idea about?
If I can say something. So this is a very interesting question because it's opening, in my opinion, three different front lanes. One is the role of the ES&H, because the roles of the ES&H manager, the sustainability manager, is changing a lot, I mean. And also, this is again a great opportunity to have a much more important role. Obviously, one of the negative things is that I don't remember to have seen in my organization one risk assessment, including the viruses, never. So the biological risk in a manufacturing company like we are was completely ignored. The second is that, okay, this is a priority, but I don't think that we are forgetting the rest of the risks that we have in the organization, because the world is going on, so going forward, so it's not stopping because of the COVID-19. It's only in brackets a priority. The third is the fact that we have new risks. And this morning I read a very interesting guideline coming from the Italian National Institute for the Risk Prevention that is considering the risk at home, because if you are working at home, you also have risks. The video terminals risks, you know, maybe you don't move, you don't, you work much more, so you are alone. So maybe there are other risks that we should have to consider for the future, as well as probably redesign the workspaces, not only in the plants, but so in the shop floor, but also in the offices, in order to better manage the actual issue and also the future issues.
Yes, thank you.
Additionally, I would say that in fact we are still not out of the crisis. For the time being, we still don't know how long it's going to last, what intensity is it going to get,
Yes.
and what will be the final spread, geographical spread of the disease. For the time being, we have seen one wave coming from Asia and then spreading all over the Western world, and we don't know if we're not going to have another wave. I mean, for the time being, there are a lot of question marks. So I think that for the time being, we've all defined some emergency rules. What are we going to do to prevent the spreading, and what are we going to do to restart progressively the activities? So for the time being, I think our vision is about, let's say, 3 to 6 months, probably. But within 6 months from now, how will the business, how will it look like? I don't know. I think it's quite difficult. And that's probably the reason why on the stock exchange, the market is going up and down every day. I mean, there is so much uncertainty that for the time being, it's very difficult to forecast what is going to happen. No one has got any crystal ball to see exactly what is going to happen. So as Franco was saying, a lot of things are going to change. I didn't elaborate that much when speaking of that on my presentation, but we have also defined a lot of things that needed to change, and working at home is something that we have also experienced with the good sides and the bad side of that. Franco was speaking about people moving less and working much more at home. That's true. We have also noticed that drift. That there are probably a lot of other drifts that we have not yet identified. So for the time being, I think it's we're a little bit in the fog, and we are navigating very slowly, very cautiously. We need to see more within the coming months what is going to happen in order to redefine our EHS policies. But something for sure, as was said before, there was an era before the coronavirus and another one after the coronavirus. For the time being, we're just at the middle, just in between.
Yeah, I would agree with the colleagues, but also would say that in addition to people not moving, we are facing also new risks, like people staying on shifts for 60 days, which is very, very difficult from the psychological point of view. And also this issue needs to be addressed, and risks are related to this might raise because people are getting tired and fatigued and get fed up with staying on site all the time. Thank you.
Thank you. There is another question from to you, Irina, and it's from Miguel Angel, and they ask, how do you manage maintenance and of installations without contractor?
What's some contractor? Sorry.
Yes. How do you manage without?
Well, basically, what they're using what is there on site right now, trying to reduce as much as possible any deliveries or anything like that, new people coming on site. I think it's completely stopped right now. What is not necessary to build or to maintain right now is also stopped. But the specifics is that many of those locations are actually have a big stock of materials because it's very remote. It depends on the weather. So they have a stock of materials for a couple of months. So this should help to overcome this situation. For the subcontractors, I mean, now it's kept to the minimum. Almost no subcontractors are coming or going from the to and from the production side.
Yeah, thank you. There is another question to Franco, but I think you have answered more or less, but I do, because one part is interesting. They say, as human resource manager, did you notice any cultural difference in the perception of the pandemic and in the risk with behavior changes like distances, etc.? But the second part of the question, which I find more interesting, is which are the main changes in managing people the pandemic has brought about and that we should maintain? For example, the increased role and responsibility of the individual. The main
changes. No, for sure the first part of the question, because this is very, very interesting, because for sure the cultural differences, let me say, or the way to think very locally, I have to say, influenced a lot the behaviors, especially at the beginning. So the arrogance to say it's the Chinese, no, it's the Italian because the Italians are dirty, you know, or they are not organized, and then because of the Japanese. And now the people who were saying that they have 1,200,000 infected people. So I mean, it's not a joke. I mean, this is the reason why I said that the virus is very democratic. Obviously, this is a bad thing, but it's also teaching us something very important. The second is, yes, probably our systems to evaluate the people, obviously, because it was like that. So we never had a crisis big like that, and especially not known at all, and still going on. I mean, as Philippe said, it's not finished, unfortunately. We don't know. We don't know if we will survive by the business standpoint, obviously, you know, because the forecast for the next month is negative by the operating income standpoint. So I mean, negative. So we will lose money. We don't produce. We don't know what kind of production we have to do. This morning I heard that PSA, so Peugeot Citroën, has 700,000 cars parked to be sold. I mean, for months and months, we will not sell anything. But the ability of the people, and despite the organizational position and the salary, as I said, the ability of the people to take decisions, to understand the problem, to react rapidly, to be organized, to be efficient in the communication is something that we don't have to forget. So by the competencies standpoint, those will be elements extremely important for the future, and not only to manage an emergency, but to manage a day-by-day business. I hope that I answered to the question.
Yes, it's good. Thank you. And what about sustainability? we have realized that we need less than we have, than we used to have. And then the companies have taken care about this, and they have improved their programs and sustainability, for example, in the circular economy or something like this. This is for all of the speakers. Anyone can answer. For example, Philip, in L'Oreal, you have changed any best practice for the sustainability?
Sustainability of business?
Yes, in L'Oreal, yes.
Well, in fact, for the time being, we have reorganized the production of some plants, as I mentioned in the presentation. So a lot of plants are 100% committed to the delivery of gel, hydroalcoholic gel. I know that the activities on the other parts of the business are slowly restarting. I mean, the restart will be gradually taking place in the coming weeks. And for the time being, I think that I don't know exactly how quick we're going to get back to a sustainable production rate. We don't know. As we were all saying a few minutes ago, and we don't know how the crisis is going to evolve. We are, of course, optimistic in our resources and our commitment to get back to a sustainable level of activity. But for the time being, there are still some question marks that needs to be answered first before we can actually forecast how sustainable we will be.
Yeah, thank you. And Jesper, in your company, you have taken another different best practice in sustainability with taking care about circular economy?
I think we are maybe a little bit different since we are delivering pharmaceuticals to patients that are depending on these every day, independent whether there is a coronavirus or not. So a lot of those will still be going on, and we have a company strategy to reach circular for zero, so that we should have zero impact on a long term. And I think that we are still pursuing in that direction. Of course, just like L'Oreal, we have also seen that this taking on a greater social responsibility is something that both gives high motivation, but also is something that we as a company needs to do. So actually, some of our test labs have now been converted from normal test labs into COVID test labs, so we can actually help with a national response on testing, so that we are part of the national test center in Denmark. So I think that, of course, we are trying to help where we can, while still focusing on this important delivery of medicine to not only Denmark, but the whole globe. And I know that we are actually now looking at how we can expand our humanitarian assistance program in order to deliver free medicine to some of the countries that needs it.
Let's see, thank you. And Franco, is your company going to improve or change anything about sustainability because of this experience or this new situation?
Yes, because you know, the saddest thing about this pandemic will be to discover at the end that we have not changed it. So we have to change for sure. So if I remember well, one of the definitions of the sustainability in general is, you know, environment, social aspects, and profit, etc. So I mean, by the environmental point of view, I have to say that traveling much less, no traffic on the roads, clean air everywhere. So the world is better now. I mean, if I can provocate a little bit, okay. By the company point of view, less traveling, less traffic, etc., means less costs. So we are discovering one world that was unknown. So it's not necessary to spend 100,000 euros every year to travel. To travel to do what, if I can do it remotely? as my colleagues said very well, because they are an example of how from a crisis could jump, could raise an opportunity, no? Changing the business model, inventing new products. Maybe we are working 3 shifts, 7 days per week, producing plastic balls for aerospace, for the sectors that now are pushing a lot, for the food industry, for the medical industry, etc. Maybe there are a lot of, for the drones, for example, no? So new markets are coming, and obviously, if we will be able to be sustainable, to respect, to improve the environment of our employees, to respect much more the land where we are positioned. This morning, I interviewed 3 candidates for a business development position in India, 3 Indians guys, and I asked them, how the COVID-19 is impacting you in India? Because we all know India, no? Where the environment is really not a lot protected. And they told us, we are learning the discipline. That's great, I mean, great. Maybe it's accelerating the growing. So being more sustainable also for them. So there are a lot of negative things, but there are a lot of opportunities to take.
Yes. And Irina?
Well, in terms of sustainability, company was already moving into the improving digitalization and to have less impact on the environment. But from the crisis point of view, for us right now, I think the oil prices are actually more crisis than the COVID-19, because all our activities are oil related. So, but we learned a lot of lessons from that situation as well. And sometimes, I cannot say right now what it's going to be, but definitely it's going to be some changes in the approach, and maybe you know, what processes could go to have more digitalization and more control from remote, and not to have more people on site. But that will we will see later on.
But there is another question. Bueno, in those part, maybe you can answer also, all of you. Someone asked, what were you most positive and most disappointing experience during the pandemic? The first part of the question. And the second one, which new aspects of prevention work that have emerged during the crisis should we try to continue in the new normal?
I could start.
Okay.
So the most, I think the most, for me, engaging thing about this whole situation is the, to a large degree, company-driven ability to work together, to want to work together, as we see today. Also, to some degree, a lot of scientists, not only in the companies, but also governmental sciences, is driving towards more and more cooperation. And I think that I really, this is my hope, and I also seen my CEO has expressed some of the same opinions, is that I hope our governments closing the borders and looking at how to cope within our own country is something that we can maybe go away from at some point and start to look at this in a more holistic, global way, instead of trying to cope within our own nations. So, so that is both my biggest, my biggest, the thing that I like the most, and also the thing that worries me the most, is that do we close our within ourselves, or do we open up? And I really hope that we will open up. And to the new normal, I hope this flexibility in the workspace is something that we can keep the future, but still acknowledging that that creates new hazards and new health and safety issues that we need to cope with as well.
Thank you, Jesper. Who wants to answer? Franco? Okay, Franco.
No, only the positive and the negative. Positive, by the general point of view, this COVID-19 is teaching us how the small things are important, okay? Things that we were not able to see anymore. Internally speaking, so in our company, the positive thing is that we discover a lot of hidden competencies. A lot of people really stepping up. By the negative point of view, let me start from the internal, so sort of mea culpa, no? We say in Latin. That the solution at the moment in time never came from the sustainability department, and this is very sad. So the sustainability department lost a great opportunity to count. By the general standpoint, the most negative things that we are unfortunately seeing is the European community, because we are not a community.
Yes, do you agree, all of you? Maybe. Yes, it could be.
Maybe it's too much political.
Yeah.
Maybe. And about the aspects of prevention work, that the things that have emerged during the crisis, do you think they will continue in the new normal? So in the future?
I think we will have to reinvent a couple of things. I mean, if I get back to the previous question, in fact, what we have discovered is that in case of crisis, the motivation is getting very, very high. Team spirit is as high as I have never seen before. So everybody is totally committed to getting out of the crisis, making sure that everybody keeps a job, making sure that we can take care of the vulnerable. I mean, everything that we've already discussed. And the counterpart of that is that we can see sometimes some overheating of the organization. So many people working in so many different areas that sometimes we may have some overheating of the organization, and we need to make sure that people can still keep the same pace of working, same motivation, without losing that motivation. One report that I've seen recently in the press was that after being confined for a couple of weeks, there were about 44% of people that were in psychological distress. So that's something that we also need to take into account. People are very committed to their work, but the counterpart is that once they are alone, they are getting in psychological distress. So what will be the future? As I said before, I have no crystal ball. One thing for sure, we'll have to redefine things. We'll have to redefine where we go working. Are we going to stay working at home forever? In that case, does that mean that the employers are going to keep the same level of buildings, the same amount of offices? Or are we going to just restrict the companies to production units and then all the other workers working at home? I mean, that's something that probably needs to be thought of. For the time being, one thing for sure, as I said before, for the coming months, 3 to 6 months, we need to make sure that we securize the environment, working environment, as well as the normal standard environment. We need to make sure that we can still produce sustainably. One thing that is also to be taken is that we have about 6 months now to redefine how we are going to work for the other 6 months after, and so on. And I think it shall take a couple of years before we can actually get back to a situation, a sustainable situation that we will be able to compare to the anti-crisis era. For the time being, it's very much too soon to call.
Yes, of course. And Irina, do you have positive and disappointing experience in situation during the pandemic?
Well, I'm mostly agree. I think my colleagues already told the most of it. So have to agree with that, and we're all in the same. I mean, we're all experiencing the same unusual situations, and also the team spirit is very high, but there are some lows in that we are experiencing that we will have to face later on, I guess. So, not much to add to what colleagues already said.
There is no doubt there are a lot of opportunities, there are a lot of work to do. We don't know many things, but we know the experience, and then we have to work in it and to think about it. It's very important. So I think more or less the questions were similar to this. So and it's time. So thank you very much for all of the speakers. It has been a very interesting. There are a lot of congratulations in the chat and a lot of people interested in. And then thank you very much. I think Hans, if you want to do the classroom, I don't know if he's Hans.
Yeah, I'm back. Thank you very much to you. So it's my
much.
role to close the session. So
Okay.
I would like to join you in thanking also you for your excellent moderation,
Thank you.
especially the participants for some great questions, and the speakers for their excellent responses, showing that we are in the midst of a process now and of a learning process. And I think that's maybe the most important message today, is that we really should take this opportunity to learn about new aspects in work life that we should have questioned maybe earlier, no? Because many of the solutions that we now seem to accept of becoming part of the new normal is something that we could have done earlier, also with the positive environmental impact that was mentioned by several speakers. So because I think what is obvious is that no one was really prepared properly for this pandemic. In spite of our fantastic risk assessment systems, regulations, and activities, we were not really prepared for it. And we saw some serious shortcomings in the risk management concepts and in our general preparedness for example, for personal protective equipment or for protocols to manage these issues. So firstly, it was a bit of a shock. And even countries that had more time, because the pandemic develops over time, did not necessarily take that time to really prepare better, but maybe thought, as it was mentioned, that this might not be the same situation in their country. What I'm impressed by is the ability at company level to react, and to react immediately on the risks, and to contain these risks, and to adjust their production and trust their activities, protecting people. Later on, the governments have, of course, reacted, and OSHA authorities have issued guidance. And in one case in Germany that I know of, it's even a proper temporary legislation, no, with detailed demands, additional demands to employers in terms of their responsibilities towards protecting workers in this period. So you have started, and I think it's the same story we heard 2 weeks ago, that companies, they have started immediately and take the necessary action. So the first reaction phase was very, I think, effective. And then the second one is now to try to maintain this, to have this stepwise reopening of the economy. And there we have a lot of questions, and which we cannot all respond to. There are approaches that have been taken, but this still needs, I think, more exchange of experiences and more interaction, because I hope really that the call that also Jesper made, that there should be a higher degree of collaboration and cooperation between not only scientists, but also between policymakers and authorities and companies. I think this is a great opportunity of that we learn together and that we together try to bring not only our health situation back on its feet, but also the economy, because the impact of a poor economy on health and well-being is tremendous and might not even be comparable to the impact of the pandemic. If we just recall now how suicide rates increase with unemployment rates. So it's a very, very complex topic we're talking about. There was a question also related to the impact on people at work, and obviously we don't have much information. We have now we are floating with information on people, number of infected people, number of people that have been kind of tested positive. We have numbers of people that have deceased, but information about the impact at the workplace is very, very limited. I've been asked about that before, and I must say the only information I have, also because I'm based in Spain, is on the health sector, because the health sector has been impacted tremendously. Between 25 and 30% of all nurses and doctors have had symptoms. They represent, I don't know, the total number is over 40,000. Representing more than 20% of all infections in a country like Spain. And I don't think Spain is the only country. We heard about problems with the shortage of preventive equipment and others, or long working hours and other strain on health personnel from other countries as well. But here the figures are really shocking. And this means now we have talked about the private sector, how the private sector is responding now, and definitely this is also a discussion that should obviously take place in the public sector. The preparedness for this health crisis has not been as it should be, and there's still problems with the quality and quantity of personal protective equipment, testing materials, and so on. So that is not, I think, acceptable in the 21st century. But this brings us back to the learning issue that we have to really review our systems, and we have to improve our preparedness, because this will definitely not be the last of this type of crisis, and it has not been the first either. But we have forgotten everything about the SARS and the MERS and the Ebola, it seems. So we have our short-term memory is not that developed, so we must remind each other of this. So with this, I would like to close the second webinar in our series. I would like once again to thank all the speakers, and would like to give them a virtual applause for the excellent contributions. As I mentioned at the beginning, the presentations will be available at the Vision Zero Business Council's website. And we will share that information via the social media. There has also been a recording of this session, and which will be published in an edited version on YouTube. So you can find also the full presentations there. And in this way can continue to share and to discuss these issues, because everybody should contribute. Thank you once again to the audience also for the many chat comments, but also the questions, those that haven't been answered during our Q&A session. We will invite the speakers to do that in a personal or private exchange, because we have the communication details, so that hopefully everybody will get a response. So is this the end? No, we have actually a third and final session planned. Again, it will be in 2 weeks' time, on the 19th of May at the same time. And I really would like you to take note of that. The idea of the last session will be that we will extract from the 2 webinars, we'll extract some of the main topics and focus during roundtables with experts on these topics. And we will very much invite the audience, the international audience, to contribute to that discussion. So it will be even more than the second session. It will be a discussion, because as we learned today very clearly, is that we need to exchange our experiences, our knowledge, and be also respectful that we are still awaiting a lot of solutions, and we need much more knowledge in order to correct our behavior, to correct our systems and correct also our prevention practices. So therefore, I warmly invite you to join us for what no doubt will be a very exciting third and final session of this series of webinars organized by the Global Vision Zero Business Council together with the International ORP Foundation. So thank you very much for your patience and for your participation, and hope to see you in 2 weeks for the final round. Thank you very much.